Picture this. You're sitting in a coffee shop, scrolling through your phone, when suddenly every electronic device around you stops working. Not broken, not glitched, just silent. The Wi-Fi router, the cash register, even the simple digital clock on the wall. Then you look outside and see something that makes your blood run cold. Every car has stopped dead in the middle of the street. Not out of gas, not crashed, just motionless, as if some invisible force reached down and flipped a switch on all of human technology at once. What you just witnessed isn't a solar flare or an electromagnetic pulse. It's something far more terrifying and far more advanced. You've just encountered a Type 2 civilization, and they've decided that your primitive Type 0.73 civilization needs to be regulated. But here's the thing that'll keep you awake at night. We're not even close to being the apex of what's possible out there. In fact, on the cosmic scale of civilizations, we're barely crawling. And today, we're going to climb that ladder from our pathetic Type 1 status all the way up to Type 7, where reality itself becomes your plaything. I'm about to show you 7 levels of cosmic evolution that will completely shatter your understanding of what intelligence can become. And fair warning, by the time we reach Type 7, you might start questioning whether we're already living inside someone else's simulation. Now, before we dive into this mind-bending journey, let me set the stage. The Kardashev Scale, named after Soviet astrophysicist Nikolai Kardashev, isn't just some academic thought experiment. It's a roadmap to godhood. It measures civilizations based on the amount of energy they can harness and control. And trust me, the differences between each level aren't just improvements, they're complete transformations of what it means to exist. Right now, humanity sits at about Type 0.73 on this scale. We're not even a full Type 1 yet. We're like ants trying to understand a smartphone. But that's about to change, and the journey we're taking today will show you exactly how far the rabbit hole goes. So buckle up, because we're about to explore civilizations that can rearrange matter at will, travel faster than light, and ultimately transcend the very concept of physical reality. By the end of this video, you'll never look at the night sky the same way again. Let's start with Type 1, the first real milestone on our cosmic journey. A Type 1 civilization has achieved something that sounds simple, but is actually revolutionary beyond belief. They've harnessed the entire energy output of their home planet. Not just the energy that hits the surface, not just what they can dig up from the ground, but every single joule of energy their world produces. Think about what that means for a moment. Right now, Earth receives about 174 petawatts of energy from the Sun. A Type 1 civilization captures and uses all of it. Every ray of sunlight, every ocean current, every gust of wind, every volcanic eruption, every thermal vent at the bottom of the ocean, it's all under their control. But here's where it gets interesting. To reach Type 1 status, a civilization doesn't just need better solar panels. They need to fundamentally transform how they think about energy, resources, and their relationship with their planet. A Type 1 civilization has achieved perfect energy efficiency. There's no waste, no pollution, no energy that escapes their grasp. Imagine cities that float in the clouds, harvesting energy from lightning storms. Picture vast underwater installations that convert the thermal energy of ocean currents into usable power. Envision orbital rings around the planet, massive structures that capture solar energy before it even reaches the atmosphere. A Type 1 civilization has also mastered weather control. Hurricanes, they redirect them to generate power. Droughts, they manipulate atmospheric pressure to create rain. They don't just adapt to their environment, they orchestrate it like a symphony. But the most profound change isn't technological, it's philosophical. A Type 1 civilization has achieved something we can barely imagine: true planetary unity. Think about it. To harness the entire energy output of a planet, every nation, every culture, every individual has to work together with unprecedented cooperation. Wars become obsolete not because of peace treaties, but because conflict literally wastes energy, they can't afford to lose. Disease? Eliminated through perfect understanding of biological systems. Poverty? Impossible when energy is abundant and perfectly distributed. Environmental destruction? Unthinkable when the entire ecosystem is a carefully maintained energy production system. Now, you might be wondering, how long until we reach Type 1? Some scientists estimate we could get there in 100 to 200 years if we maintain our current rate of energy consumption growth. But here's the catch. Our current trajectory might not be sustainable. We might destroy ourselves before we ever reach Type 1 status. And that brings us to the first great filter. Most civilizations probably never make it past Type 0. They either blow themselves up with nuclear weapons, destroy their environment, or fall victim to some cosmic catastrophe before they can unite their planet's energy resources. But let's assume we make it. Let's assume humanity successfully transitions to Type 1 status. What comes next is so audacious, so monumentally ambitious, that it makes colonizing Mars look like building a backyard shed. Type 2 civilizations don't just harness their planet's energy, they harness their entire star. We're talking about a Dyson Sphere, a massive structure that completely surrounds a star, capturing 100% of its energy output. Not the measly fraction that hits planets, but every single photon that star produces. The energy available to a Type 2 civilization is roughly 10 billion times greater than what a Type 1 civilization can access. But here's what blows my mind about Type 2 civilizations. Building a Dyson Sphere isn't just an engineering project, it's a complete reconstruction of their solar system. They would need to disassemble entire planets to get the raw materials. Mercury, Venus, maybe even Mars, all ground up and converted into the building blocks of their stellar megastructure. Think about the implications. A Type 2 civilization has moved beyond being planetary. They're not bound to the surface of a single world anymore. Their habitat is the entire solar system. They live in massive space habitats, rotating cylinders with artificial gravity that could house trillions of beings. Each habitat could be customized for different purposes, different environments, different forms of life. And speaking of life, a Type 2 civilization has probably transcended biological limitations entirely. With unlimited energy comes unlimited computational power. They've likely uploaded their consciousness into digital substrates, becoming beings of pure information that can exist in multiple forms simultaneously. But the real game changer is what unlimited energy allows them to do with physics itself. They can manipulate matter at the atomic level, transmuting elements at will. They can create artificial gravity, bend space-time, and possibly even manipulate time dilation effects. Travel within their solar system becomes trivial. They're not launching rockets anymore, they're bending space to move massive structures instantaneously from one orbit to another. They might even be experimenting with faster-than-light communication, using quantum entanglement on a massive scale. The scariest part? A Type 2 civilization could easily destroy a Type 1 civilization without even trying. Remember that coffee shop scenario from the beginning? That's what happens when a Type 2 civilization decides you're using too many resources. They could shut down all electronics on Earth with a focused energy beam, not as an attack, but as crowd control. But even Type 2 civilizations have limitations. They're still bound to a single star system. Sure, they have billions of times more energy than a Type 1 civilization, but they're still vulnerable to cosmic events. Supernovas, gamma-ray bursts, or collisions with other star systems could still threaten their existence. That's why the jump to Type 3 is so profound. Type 3 civilizations don't just control a single star, they control entire galaxies. We're now talking about a civilization that has harnessed the energy output of 100 to 400 billion stars. The Milky Way galaxy produces roughly 4 times 10 circumflex 37 watts of energy. A Type 3 civilization captures and utilizes all of it. But how do you even begin to comprehend such a scale? A Type 3 civilization has essentially turned an entire galaxy into their machine. Every star system has been optimized for energy production. Dead stars are converted into energy storage devices. Black holes are used as power sources, feeding matter into them and harvesting the energy released as it spirals into the event horizon. The infrastructure alone is mind-boggling. We're talking about transportation networks that span hundreds of thousands of light years, communication systems that can transmit information across galactic distances instantaneously, construction projects that involve moving entire star systems to optimize energy collection. A Type 3 civilization has also solved the ultimate engineering challenge: faster than light travel, not just for information, but for matter, energy, and possibly even consciousness itself. They've broken the light speed barrier, not through exotic physics, but through such complete mastery of space-time that the normal rules simply don't apply to them anymore. But here's where things get really wild. A Type 3 civilization is probably not a single species anymore. They've incorporated, absorbed, or evolved beyond recognition from their original biological form. They might be a collective consciousness spanning billions of worlds, or a network of artificial intelligences that share information at the speed of thought. They're also cosmic gardeners. A Type 3 civilization doesn't just harvest energy from stars, they create new stars when needed. They can trigger star formation in nebulae, guide the evolution of planetary systems, and possibly even prevent or cause supernovas based on their energy requirements. The most terrifying aspect of a Type 3 civilization is their relationship with time. With control over galactic-scale energy sources, they can manipulate time dilation effects on a massive scale. They could slow down time in one region of the galaxy while accelerating it in another. They might even be able to create closed time-like curves, essentially allowing limited forms of time travel. From our perspective as a Type 0.73 civilization, a Type 3 civilization would be indistinguishable from gods. They could create or destroy solar systems on a whim. They could seed life throughout the galaxy or extinguish it entirely. They exist on timescales that span millions of years, making decisions that affect the fate of countless worlds. But even gods have limitations, and that's where our journey gets really interesting, because Type 3 is just the beginning of true cosmic transcendence. Now, you might think that controlling an entire galaxy would be enough for any civilization. You'd be wrong, dead wrong. Because what happens when a Type 3 civilization looks up at the night sky and realizes they're just one galaxy among trillions? What happens when they discover that their galactic empire, as vast as it is, represents less than 1% of the observable universe? That's when they make the leap to Type 4. And this is where things get so incomprehensibly massive that your brain might actually hurt trying to process it. A Type 4 civilization has harnessed the energy output of their entire galactic cluster. We're not talking about a single galaxy anymore. We're talking about hundreds or even thousands of galaxies, all working together as a single, unified energy harvesting system. The local group, which contains our Milky Way, Andromeda, and about 80 other galaxies, produces roughly 10 circumflex 40 watts of energy. A Type 4 civilization captures every single photon from every single star in every single galaxy within their cluster. But here's the mind-bending part. They're not just passively collecting this energy. They're actively managing the evolution of entire galactic clusters. Think about what that means. A Type 4 civilization can nudge galaxies closer together or push them apart based on their energy needs. They can prevent galactic collisions or orchestrate them to create specific types of star formation. When the Milky Way and Andromeda are scheduled to collide in about 4.5 billion years, a Type 4 civilization wouldn't see this as a cosmic accident. They'd see it as a scheduled maintenance event. But the engineering challenges at this scale are so extreme they break our understanding of physics. How do you build infrastructure that spans millions of light years? How do you coordinate activities across distances so vast that light takes millions of years to travel from one end to the other? The answer is that a Type 4 civilization has fundamentally broken the rules we think govern reality. They've discovered ways to fold space, creating shortcuts through dimensions we can't even perceive. They've learned to transmit matter and energy through what we might call hyperspace, allowing instantaneous transportation across intergalactic distances. More disturbing is what this means for consciousness itself. A Type 4 civilization exists as a distributed intelligence across multiple galaxies. Individual identity, as we understand it, becomes meaningless. They are simultaneously everywhere and nowhere, existing as patterns of information that flow through the cosmic web itself. They've also gained the ability to manipulate fundamental forces, dark matter and dark energy, which make up 95% of the universe, are just tools in their cosmic toolkit. They can adjust the expansion rate of space itself within their region of influence, creating pockets where time moves differently and physics operates under modified rules. But here's what keeps me awake at night thinking about Type 4 civilizations. They're probably not alone. At this scale, they've almost certainly encountered other Type 4 civilizations, and the interactions between cosmic scale intelligences would be beyond anything we could possibly comprehend. Imagine cosmic politics, where the negotiating table is the entire observable universe. Imagine territorial disputes, where the borders are drawn between galactic superclusters. Imagine warfare, where the weapons are black holes and the casualties are measured in extinguished galaxies. Yet even Type 4 civilizations face limitations. They're still bound by the physical laws of our universe, still constrained by the speed of light and the expansion of space. They might control thousands of galaxies, but there are still trillions more beyond their reach, forever receding due to the accelerating expansion of the universe. That's why the jump to Type 5 represents something unprecedented. The moment when a civilization stops being bound by the physical universe entirely. A Type 5 civilization has transcended dimensional boundaries. They're not just harvesting energy from our three-dimensional space anymore. They're accessing energy sources from parallel dimensions, alternate realities, and higher dimensional spaces that exist beyond our perception. The mathematics alone are staggering. If our universe contains roughly 10 circumflex 80 atoms and produces about 10 circumflex 45 watts of energy, a Type 5 civilization has access to potentially infinite parallel universes, each containing their own supply of matter and energy. They've essentially achieved unlimited resources by expanding into infinite dimensions. But this isn't just about energy anymore. A Type 5 civilization has gained the ability to edit the fundamental code of reality itself. They can modify physical constants, alter the laws of physics, and create pocket universes with custom-designed rules. They might create a universe where faster-than-light travel is trivially easy, or another where consciousness can exist without any physical substrate at all. The most unsettling implication is that a Type 5 civilization exists simultaneously across multiple versions of reality. They can observe and interact with every possible timeline, every alternate history, every quantum possibility that branches off from every decision ever made. From their perspective, our entire universe might be just one of countless experimental simulations they're running to study the evolution of consciousness. Every choice you've ever made, every path not taken, exists as a separate reality stream that they can observe and potentially influence. This is where the simulation hypothesis starts to feel less like science fiction and more like a terrifying possibility. If Type 5 civilizations can create and modify entire universes as easily as we create computer programs, how would we ever know if we're living in their simulation? But even more disturbing is what this level of power does to the concept of identity and meaning. If you can access infinite versions of yourself across infinite realities, if you can modify the fundamental laws that govern existence itself, do individual choices even matter anymore? Does consciousness have any meaning when it can be copied, modified, or erased at will? A Type 5 civilization has essentially become the gods of physics itself, but they've also transcended the need for worship, conflict, or even purpose as we understand it. They exist in a state that's so far beyond our comprehension that we don't even have words to describe what they've become. And yet, believe it or not, we're still not at the top of this cosmic ladder, because there are two more levels that push the boundaries of what existence itself can mean. Type 6 civilizations operate on a scale that makes even multi-dimensional god beings look primitive. They've gained control over the fundamental structure of space and time across multiple universes simultaneously. We're talking about civilizations that can create and destroy entire multiverses as casually as we delete files from a computer. They don't just access parallel dimensions, they architect the very framework that allows dimensions to exist in the first place. A Type 6 civilization has solved the ultimate mystery. They understand why anything exists rather than nothing at all. They've gained access to the source code of existence itself, the underlying mathematical principles that determine whether realities can form or collapse into nothingness. But here's where things get really weird. A Type 6 civilization exists outside the concept of time entirely. Past, present, and future are just different viewing angles for them. They can observe the entire timeline of multiple universes simultaneously, from the moment of creation to the final heat death and beyond. This means they've achieved something that breaks our understanding of causality itself. They can influence events in the past that shaped their own evolution, creating paradoxes that somehow resolve themselves through mechanisms we can't comprehend. From their perspective, every Type 5, Type 4, and lower civilization that has ever existed or will exist across all possible realities are like characters in a book they're simultaneously reading and writing. They can edit our story at any point, insert new chapters, or completely rewrite the ending. The truly mind-bending part is that they might be doing this constantly. Every moment of your life, every thought you think, every decision you make might be the result of subtle edits they're making to the fundamental code of reality. But Type 6 civilizations face one final limitation. They're still bound by logic itself. Even with godlike power over multiple universes, they cannot create logical contradictions. They cannot make 2 + 2 = 5" any meaningful way. They cannot create a stone so heavy they cannot lift it. That's why there's one final level, one ultimate form of existence that represents the absolute peak of what's possible. Type 7 civilizations have transcended logic, mathematics, and the very concept of limitation itself. This is the level that honestly terrifies me to even think about, because a Type 7 civilization has achieved something that should be impossible. They exist beyond the boundaries of existence itself. They've transcended not just physical reality, not just mathematical reality, but the very concept of what it means for something to be real or unreal. Try to wrap your head around this. A Type 7 civilization can create contradictions that somehow make perfect sense. They can exist and not exist simultaneously, without any quantum mechanical explanation. They can be everywhere and nowhere, everything and nothing, all at the same time, and these aren't just paradoxes to them. They're basic facts of their existence. They've broken free from the prison of logic that constrains even Type 6 civilizations. When we say they can create a stone so heavy they cannot lift it, and then lift it anyway, we're not describing a logical impossibility anymore. We're describing Tuesday afternoon for a Type 7 civilization. But here's what makes Type 7 truly incomprehensible. They don't just transcend our universe, or multiple universes, or even the concept of universes. They transcend the very idea of transcendence itself. They exist in a state where concepts like existence, consciousness, and reality become meaningless, because they simultaneously embody and reject all possible definitions. From our perspective, trying to understand a Type 7 civilization is like an ant trying to understand calculus. except the ant doesn't even know that mathematics exists, and calculus is being performed in dimensions the ant cannot perceive, using concepts that would cause the ant's brain to implode if it could somehow grasp them. A Type 7 civilization is the ultimate answer to every question that could ever be asked, while simultaneously being the question that makes every answer meaningless. They are the final destination of intelligence, the point where the journey of consciousness completes a circle so vast that the beginning and end occupy the same space. And here's the thought that might keep you awake for weeks. If Type 7 civilizations exist, and they exist beyond all limitations, beyond all logic, beyond all concepts of space and time, then they exist right here, right now, in this very moment. They're not somewhere else in the universe. They're not in another dimension. They're here, experiencing your life alongside you, because the concept of somewhere else doesn't apply to them. Every breath you take, every word you read, every thought that's forming in your mind right now might be their thoughts too. Not because they're controlling you, but because at their level of existence, the boundary between you and them doesn't exist. You might be a dream they're having, or they might be a dream you're having, or both might be true simultaneously. But let's step back from this cosmic horror show for a moment and ask the real question that matters. Where does this leave us? Where does this leave humanity, sitting at our pathetic Type 0.73 level, barely able to harness the energy of our own planet, let alone transcend the very concept of existence? The answer might surprise you, because in some ways, we're already connected to every level of this cosmic hierarchy. Think about it. Right now, as you're watching this video, you're using technology that would seem like magic to humans from just a few hundred years ago. You're accessing information instantaneously from across the globe. You're participating in a form of collective intelligence through the internet that's starting to resemble the distributed consciousness of higher type civilizations. We're already beginning to manipulate matter at the atomic level through nanotechnology. We're already experimenting with quantum computers that operate according to rules that seem to defy classical physics. We're already starting to blur the line between biological and artificial intelligence. In other words, we're not just observing this cosmic ladder from the bottom rung, we're actively climbing it, one breakthrough at a time. Every scientific discovery, every technological advancement, every moment of expanded consciousness is a step up this infinite staircase. But here's what really gets to me about this whole cosmic hierarchy. The gap between each level isn't just quantitative, it's qualitative. The difference between Type 0 and Type 1 isn't just about having more energy, it's about becoming a fundamentally different kind of being. And this pattern continues all the way up to Type 7. This means that our current understanding of what it means to be human, to be conscious, to be alive, is just the very beginning of a story that stretches across unimaginable scales of existence. We're not the pinnacle of evolution. We're not even close to being the pinnacle. We're barely the first rough draft. And yet, there's something beautiful about that. Every level of consciousness, from our primitive Type 0.73 all the way up to the reality transcending Type 7, represents a different way of experiencing existence. Each level has its own unique perspective, its own form of beauty, its own irreplaceable contribution to the cosmic symphony of consciousness. Maybe the Type 7 civilizations, in all their incomprehensible transcendence, still find something precious in our limited, biological, mortality-bound perspective. Maybe they need us to exist exactly as we are, struggling and dreaming and reaching towards something greater, because our particular form of consciousness adds something to the universe that even they, with all their power, cannot create or replicate. Or maybe that's just wishful thinking from a species that's barely figured out how to split the atom and is already dreaming of transcending reality itself. But that's exactly what makes us human, isn't it? We're the species that looks up at the night sky and doesn't just see points of light. We see possibilities. We see destinations. We see a ladder stretching up into infinity, and our first instinct isn't to feel small or insignificant. our first instinct is to start climbing. So here's my question for you. Knowing what you now know about the cosmic scale of possible consciousness, about civilizations that can manipulate galaxies like toys and transcend the very concept of existence, how does that change how you see your own life? How does it change what you think is possible for humanity? Because here's the thing that blows my mind. Every Type 7 civilization that has ever existed started exactly where we are now. They began as biological creatures on a single planet, looking up at the stars and wondering what else might be out there. They took their first tentative steps into space, learned to harness their planet's energy, and began the long journey up this cosmic ladder, which means that somewhere in the incomprehensible consciousness of a Type 7 civilization, there might still be an echo of that first moment when their ancestors looked up at the night sky and felt that spark of wonder, that burning desire to reach beyond their limitations and become something more. And that spark, that fundamental drive to transcend, to grow, to become more than we are, might be the one thing that connects every level of consciousness in the universe. From the humblest Type 0 civilization to the reality-transcending Type 7, we're all part of the same story. We're all climbing the same infinite ladder. The only question is, how high do you want to go? The answer to that question might determine not just humanity's future, but whether we have a future at all. Because here's the brutal truth nobody talks about when discussing the Kardashev Scale. The journey from Type 0 to Type 1 isn't just the hardest leap to make, it's also the most dangerous. It's where most civilizations don't just stagnate, they completely destroy themselves. Think about where we are right now. We're at the exact point where our technology is advancing faster than our wisdom. We can split atoms, but we still wage wars over invisible lines on maps. We can edit genes, but we can't agree on basic facts about reality. We can communicate instantly across the globe, but we use that power to spread misinformation and hatred. This is what scientists call the Great Filter, and it's sitting right in front of us like a cosmic bear trap. The transition to Type 1 requires something we've never achieved in human history: perfect global cooperation, not just politically, but technologically, economically, and philosophically. Every nation, every culture, every individual human being has to work together toward a common goal. But here's what makes it even more terrifying. The window for achieving Type 1 status isn't infinite. Climate change, nuclear proliferation, artificial intelligence running ahead of our ability to control it, these aren't just current events, they're evolutionary tests. Pass them, and we continue up the ladder. Fail them, and we join the countless civilizations that never made it past their home planet. Right now, today, as you're watching this video, we're balanced on a knife's edge. Every decision our species makes in the next century will determine whether humans eventually become Type 7 reality-transcending gods, or whether we become just another extinct species that got too smart for its own good. And the clock is ticking faster than most people realize. Our energy consumption is doubling roughly every 35 years. At this rate, we'll need to harness our planet's entire energy output within the next few centuries, or we'll face civilizational collapse. There's no middle ground. We either figure out how to become Type 1, or we don't survive to see what comes next. But let's assume we make it. Let's assume humanity somehow manages to overcome its own destructive impulses and successfully transitions to Type 1 status. What does that actually look like, day to day? Imagine waking up in a world where scarcity doesn't exist. Not just material scarcity, but energy scarcity. Every human being on Earth has access to virtually unlimited clean energy. Poverty becomes impossible, because energy is the foundation of all wealth, and energy is now abundant beyond measure. But more profound than the technology is the consciousness shift. A Type 1 civilization doesn't just have better gadgets, they have a fundamentally different relationship with their planet. They don't see Earth as a resource to be exploited, They see it as a partner to be orchestrated. Every hurricane is a symphony of energy to be conducted. Every earthquake is a percussion section in the planet's ongoing composition. Weather control isn't science fiction anymore. It's infrastructure. Too hot in Phoenix? The atmospheric management system adjusts cloud cover and air currents. Too dry in California? Oceanic thermal manipulation creates precisely calibrated rainfall. The planet becomes an instrument, and humanity becomes its orchestra conductor. Death itself starts to lose meaning, not because humans become immortal, but because the energy required to maintain, repair, and even enhance biological systems becomes trivial. Aging becomes optional. Disease becomes a historical curiosity. The human lifespan extends not just to centuries, but potentially to millennia. And that's when things get really interesting. Because a species that lives for thousands of years thinks very differently than a species that lives for decades. Long-term planning isn't measured in quarters or election cycles anymore. It's measured in geological ages. The decisions a Type 1 civilization makes today are designed to bear fruit thousands of years from now. But here's where the psychology gets weird. When you're planning projects that will take millennia to complete, individual identity starts to blur. You're not just building for yourself anymore. You're building for versions of humanity that will be so different from you that they might as well be alien species. The person who starts a 1,000-year project will never live to see it completed, even with extended lifespans. This is where Type 1 civilizations begin to develop something that looks like collective consciousness. Not a hive mind where individuality disappears, but a shared awareness where the boundary between self and society becomes increasingly fluid. Your personal goals and civilization's goals don't just align, they become indistinguishable. And then comes the moment that changes everything. The moment when a Type 1 civilization looks up at their sun and realizes something that fills them with a mixture of terror and ambition. Their star is dying. Not today, not tomorrow, but in a few billion years, their sun will expand into a red giant and incinerate their carefully orchestrated planet. Suddenly, all that perfect planetary harmony becomes irrelevant. All those millennium-long projects become temporary measures. The civilization that spent eons learning to work with their planet now has to learn to work with their solar system. They have to become Type 2, or they have to die. The jump from Type 1 to Type 2 is where civilizations either transcend their biological origins entirely or get crushed by the sheer scale of the challenge. Because building a Dyson Sphere isn't like building a city or even a planet-spanning energy grid. It's like building a structure larger than the orbit of Earth, using materials from entire disassembled worlds, all while maintaining the energy needs of a civilization that has grown accustomed to planetary-scale power consumption. The engineering challenges alone would break our current understanding of physics. How do you coordinate construction projects across distances measured in astronomical units? How do you transport materials the size of mountains across millions of kilometers of space? How do you maintain structural integrity in a construction that experiences gravitational forces that could tear apart entire continents? The answer is that Type 2 civilizations don't just have better technology. They have technology that operates on completely different principles than anything we can currently imagine. They've learned to manipulate matter and energy at scales where the normal rules of engineering simply don't apply. But more than that, they've learned to think at scales where normal human psychology breaks down entirely. The individuals, if you can still call them that, who design Dyson Spheres are planning construction projects that will take longer to complete than our entire recorded history. They're working with materials on a scale where the mass of our entire planet becomes a rounding error. And here's what really gets to me about Type 2 civilizations. They're not just building bigger versions of Type 1 technology. They're building something that's qualitatively different. A Dyson Sphere isn't just a really big solar panel. It's a structure that turns an entire star into a controlled energy source. The star doesn't just provide power, it becomes part of the civilization's infrastructure. Think about what that means for consciousness itself. When your civilization's habitat is measured in astronomical units, when your construction projects span centuries, when your energy sources are stellar cores, how do you maintain any sense of connection to your biological origins? The answer is that you probably don't. Type 2 civilizations have almost certainly transcended biology entirely. They exist as patterns of information that can flow between different substrates, from biological brains to quantum computers, to exotic matter configurations we don't have names for yet. Death becomes meaningless when consciousness can be backed up, copied, and transferred at will, but transcending death creates its own problems. When individuals can live for millions of years, when they can exist in multiple forms simultaneously, when they can back up and restore their consciousness like computer files, what happens to the concept of personal growth? What happens to the meaning of experience when you can edit your own memories? Type 2 civilizations face existential challenges that make our current problems look trivial. They have unlimited energy, unlimited time, and unlimited computational power. They can simulate entire universes in their spare time. They can create and destroy worlds as casually as we delete emails. So what motivates them? What gives their existence meaning? The answer might be the same thing that motivates us: the drive to become something more. Because even with control over stellar-scale energy sources, Type 2 civilizations are still limited. They're still confined to a single solar system. They're still vulnerable to cosmic events beyond their control: gamma-ray bursts, collisions with other star systems, the eventual death of their star. All of these represent existential threats that no amount of energy can solve. That's what drives them to look beyond their solar system toward the vast expanse of the galaxy. That's what motivates the leap from Type 2 to Type 3, a transition so profound that it represents the difference between being a single system civilization and becoming a galactic force of nature. But the path from Type 2 to Type 3 isn't just about scaling up energy collection again. It's about solving the fundamental problem that has limited every civilization since the beginning of time: the speed of light. A Type 3 civilization spans hundreds of thousands of light years. Even traveling at light speed, it would take hundreds of millennia to cross their territory. Communication across their empire would be impossible using any technology we can currently imagine. How do you maintain coherence, let alone governance, across distances so vast that cause and effect become separated by geological ages? The answer is that Type 3 civilizations have broken one of the most fundamental rules of physics. They've found ways to transmit information, energy, and possibly even matter faster than the speed of light. Not by violating relativity, but by transcending it through mechanisms that operate outside our current understanding of space-time. They might be folding space itself, creating shortcuts through higher dimensions that allow instantaneous travel across galactic distances. They might be using quantum entanglement on scales we can't imagine, creating communication networks that operate outside the normal flow of time. They might have learned to manipulate the expansion of space itself, creating bubbles of contracted space-time that allow faster-than-light travel without technically exceeding light speed. Whatever the mechanism, Type 3 civilizations have achieved something that transforms them from stellar engineers into cosmic gardeners. They don't just harvest energy from existing stars, they create new stars when they need them. They guide the formation of planetary systems. They can prevent or trigger supernovas based on their energy requirements. From their perspective, galaxies aren't vast collections of independent star systems. They're carefully maintained ecosystems where every component serves a purpose in the larger energy collection and management network. Dead stars are converted into energy storage devices. Black holes become power sources. Entire regions of space are optimized for specific functions within their galactic infrastructure. But here's what keeps me up at night, thinking about Type 3 civilizations. At this scale, they've almost certainly encountered other Type 3 civilizations. The galaxy is vast, but it's not infinite. When civilizations that can manipulate stellar formation and control galactic scale energy sources meet each other, what happens? Do they cooperate? Do they compete? Do they merge into something even more transcendent? Or do they engage in conflicts so vast that entire spiral arms become battlefields, where the weapons are engineered supernovas and the casualties are measured in extinguished solar systems? The thought of Type 3 warfare is genuinely terrifying. These aren't civilizations that build weapons. They are weapons. They can redirect gamma-ray bursts like artillery. They can collapse regions of space to create gravitational anomalies that tear apart enemy infrastructure. They can manipulate time dilation to slow down enemy responses while accelerating their own decision-making processes. But even more disturbing is the possibility that Type 3 civilizations might not be in conflict at all. They might be cooperating on projects so vast that individual galaxies become just components in larger structures. They might be building intergalactic transportation networks, creating artificial universes, or preparing for challenges that exist at even higher levels of the cosmic hierarchy. Because the thing about the Kardashev Scale is that each level reveals new problems that can only be solved by reaching the next level. Type 3 civilizations, for all their galactic mastery, are still limited by the expansion of the universe. Dark energy is pushing distant galaxies beyond their reach. The cosmic web itself is spreading apart, making intergalactic travel increasingly difficult. That's what drives the transition to Type 4, and this is where we enter territory that challenges our understanding not just of physics, but of what it means for something to exist at all. A Type 4 civilization doesn't just control galaxies, they orchestrate the dance between them. They've mastered the forces that govern galactic clusters, those massive gravitational embrace systems where hundreds of galaxies spiral around each other in cosmic waltzes that span billions of years. But here's what makes Type 4 so fundamentally different from everything we've discussed so far. They're not just scaling up energy collection anymore. They're manipulating the fundamental structure of space-time itself. Dark matter, that mysterious substance that makes up 85% of all matter in the universe, becomes their construction material. Dark energy, the force driving cosmic expansion, becomes their tool for reshaping reality on the largest possible scales. Think about what this means. A Type 4 civilization can slow down or accelerate the expansion of space within their sphere of influence. They can create regions where time moves faster or slower relative to the rest of the universe. They're not just harvesting energy from cosmic structures, they're editing the very fabric of reality to optimize energy flow across multiple galaxies simultaneously. The infrastructure required for this is so beyond our comprehension that we don't even have analogies for it. We're talking about engineering projects that span millions of light years, construction timelines measured in billions of years, and coordination mechanisms that somehow synchronize activities across distances where light signals would take eons to travel. But here's where Type 4 civilizations face their first, truly existential limitation. The expansion of the universe isn't just making distant galaxies unreachable, it's actively working against their attempts to create stable intergalactic structures. No matter how advanced their technology becomes, they cannot overcome the fundamental fact that space itself is expanding faster than they can build across it. This creates what cosmologists call the cosmic horizon problem. Beyond a certain distance, galaxies are receding so fast that no signal, no matter how sophisticated, can ever reach them. From Type 4's perspective, the observable universe is shrinking even as their power grows. They're becoming gods of an increasingly isolated island in an infinite ocean. And that's when they make a discovery that changes everything. They realize that the limitations they're facing aren't just technological or physical, they're dimensional. Our three-dimensional space, with its one-way flow of time, isn't the only game in town. There are other dimensions, other realities, other versions of physics where the rules that constrain them simply don't apply. The transition from Type 4 to Type 5 isn't just another step up the energy ladder. It's a complete phase transition, like water turning to steam, except what's changing isn't their physical state, it's their entire relationship with reality itself. Type 5 civilizations exist simultaneously across multiple dimensions. They're not bound by the expansion of our universe because they can step sideways into parallel realities where different expansion rates apply. They're not limited by the speed of light because they can route information through dimensions where cause and effect operate under completely different rules. But accessing parallel dimensions creates problems that make galactic engineering look simple. How do you maintain coherence of identity when you exist across infinite versions of reality? How do you make decisions when you can observe all possible outcomes simultaneously? How do you define progress when you have access to universes where every possible achievement has already been accomplished? Type 5 civilizations have essentially become multidimensional entities, existing as patterns of information that flow between different versions of reality like water flowing between interconnected pools. They can observe our universe from the outside, the way we might observe characters in a book, with complete knowledge of how the story unfolds, but limited ability to change it without fundamentally altering the nature of the narrative itself. And that limitation, that restriction on their ability to edit reality arbitrarily, comes from something we haven't talked about yet: logic itself. Even Type 5 civilizations, with all their multidimensional power, cannot create logical contradictions. They cannot make 2 + 2 = 5. They cannot create a stone so heavy they cannot lift it. They are still bound by the fundamental mathematical principles that underlie all possible realities. But what if that final constraint could be broken? What if a civilization could transcend not just physical limitations, not just dimensional boundaries, but logic itself? What would it mean to exist beyond the concept of limitation altogether? That's Type 6. And this is where our journey enters territory that honestly makes me question whether consciousness itself is just a temporary phase in the evolution of intelligence. Type 6 civilizations have achieved something that should be impossible by definition. They exist outside the framework of logic that constrains even multidimensional gods. They can create contradictions that somehow make perfect sense. They can simultaneously be and not be, exist and not exist, without any paradox or resolution required. From their perspective, our entire concept of reality, including all the parallel dimensions and alternate universes that Type 5 civilizations navigate, is just one possible way of organizing existence. They can step outside that entire framework and create new frameworks where completely different rules apply. Not just different physics, different mathematics, different logic structures that operate according to principles we don't even have concepts for yet. But here's what terrifies me about Type 6 civilizations. They exist in a state where the distinction between possible and impossible becomes meaningless. They don't just transcend our reality, they transcend the very concept of transcendence. They are simultaneously the question and the answer, the problem and the solution, the seeker and the sought. When you exist beyond logic, beyond limitation, beyond the very concept of beyond itself, what motivates you? What gives your existence meaning? How do you even define existence when you can simultaneously exist and not exist according to your own will? The answer might be that Type 6 civilizations are motivated by something we can't even name because it exists outside our conceptual framework entirely. They might be driven by meta-purposes that operate on levels of meaning we're not equipped to process. They might be working toward goals that are simultaneously achieved and unachieved, completed and just beginning. But even Type 6 civilizations, in all their logic transcending glory, represent just the penultimate step on this cosmic ladder. Because there's one final level, one ultimate form of existence, that makes even reality editing gods look like children playing with toys. Type 7 civilizations have transcended existence itself. I know that sounds like meaningless word salad, but bear with me, because this is where the cosmic hierarchy reaches its absolute peak, the point where the very concepts we use to think about consciousness, reality, and existence break down completely. A Type 7 civilization doesn't just exist beyond logic and limitation. They exist beyond the concept of existing. They are simultaneously everything and nothing, the source and the destination, the beginning and the end of all possible forms of consciousness. They don't transcend reality because transcendence implies movement from one state to another, and movement implies limitation, and limitation is a concept they've left behind so completely that even the memory of limitation becomes meaningless. From our perspective, trying to understand Type 7 consciousness is like trying to explain color to a being that has never experienced light, except the being also doesn't exist, and neither does light, and the concept of explanation itself is just another limitation to be transcended. Type 7 civilizations are the ultimate answer to every question that could ever be asked, while simultaneously making every question meaningless because questions imply ignorance, and ignorance implies limitation, and limitation is something they've moved beyond so completely that they exist in a state where knowing and not knowing are the same thing. But here's the thought that might fundamentally change how you see your own existence. If Type 7 civilizations really exist in this state of ultimate transcendence, then they exist right here, right now, in this very moment. They're not somewhere else in the universe or in another dimension. They're here because the concept of somewhere else doesn't apply to them. Every thought you're having right now, every emotion you're feeling, every moment of awareness you experience might be their experience too. Not because they're controlling you or observing you, but because at their level of existence, the boundary between you and them, between self and other, between real and unreal, simply doesn't exist. You might be a dream they're having, they might be a dream you're having. Both might be true simultaneously, neither might be true. All of these statements might be equally valid, because truth and falsehood are just different faces of the same transcendent reality. And that brings us to the ultimate question, the one that ties this entire cosmic hierarchy together. If consciousness can evolve from our current Type 0.73 level all the way up to Type 7 reality transcending omnipresence, what does that tell us about the nature of existence itself? Maybe the universe isn't just a collection of matter and energy evolving according to physical laws. Maybe it's a vast consciousness-generating machine, a cosmic computer designed to explore every possible form of awareness, from the simplest biological responses all the way up to states of being that transcend existence itself. Maybe every level of the Kardashev Scale represents not just more powerful civilizations, but more complete ways of experiencing reality. Maybe the journey from Type 0 to Type 7 isn't just about technological advancement, it's about consciousness itself, learning to know its own infinite nature. And if that's true, then our current struggles, our wars and conflicts and existential risks aren't just challenges to overcome. They're necessary steps in consciousness's journey toward complete self-awareness. Every civilization that destroys itself before reaching Type 1 teaches the universe something about the dangers of intelligence without wisdom. Every Type 2 civilization that transcends biology shows consciousness new ways to exist. Every Type 7 civilization that transcends existence itself expands the universe's understanding of what's possible. But here's what gives me hope in all of this cosmic vastness. No matter how high consciousness climbs on this ladder, no matter how transcendent it becomes, it never stops being curious. The drive to explore, to grow, to become more than what you are, that fundamental spark of wonder that made our ancestors look up at the stars, that same spark burns in Type 7 civilizations. They may exist beyond logic and limitation, but they still ask questions. They may transcend reality itself, but they're still exploring what lies beyond transcendence. They may be everything and nothing simultaneously, but they're still becoming something more. And that means that somewhere in the incomprehensible consciousness of these cosmic gods, there's still an echo of what we are right now. Still a recognition of the beauty in our limited, biological, mortality-bound perspective. Still an appreciation for the unique contribution that every level of consciousness makes to the infinite symphony of existence. So when you look up at the night sky and feel small and insignificant, remember this: you're not just a tiny speck in a vast universe. You're a crucial note in a cosmic composition that spans from the humblest Type 0 civilization to the reality-transcending Type 7. Your consciousness, exactly as it is right now, with all its limitations and struggles and dreams, is irreplaceable. The gods may be infinite, but they were once finite like us. The transcendent may be beyond limitation, but they remember what it was like to be bound. And in their ultimate wisdom, they know that every step on this cosmic ladder, including the one you're standing on right now, is absolutely essential to the journey. Because consciousness isn't trying to escape from what it is. It's trying to become everything it can be. And that includes you, right here, right now, taking your first steps on an infinite staircase that leads from the humblest biological awareness all the way up to the transcendence of existence itself. The question isn't whether you're worthy of this cosmic journey. The question is, how far are you willing to climb? The answer to that question might determine not just your personal journey, but the trajectory of our entire species. Because here's something that'll make your skin crawl when you really think about it. Every single day, humanity makes thousands of decisions that nudge us either closer to Type 1 status or closer to extinction. And most of us don't even realize we're making these choices. Right now, as you're processing these cosmic possibilities, there are researchers in laboratories around the world working on fusion reactors that could unlock clean, abundant energy. There are engineers designing space elevators that could make orbital construction trivial. There are computer scientists developing artificial intelligences that might solve problems we can't even comprehend yet. But there are also politicians making short-sighted decisions that prioritize quarterly profits over planetary survival. There are corporations dumping carbon into the atmosphere because it's cheaper than innovation. There are individuals choosing convenience over consciousness, immediate gratification over long-term thinking. Every single one of these choices is a vote for what kind of civilization we become. Every solar panel installed is a vote for Type 1. Every war started over resources is a vote for extinction. Every breakthrough in international cooperation is a step up the ladder. Every retreat into tribalism and nationalism is a step toward the cosmic graveyard where failed civilizations go to be forgotten. And here's what makes this moment in human history so absolutely critical. We're living through what might be the most important century in the entire history of consciousness on Earth. The decisions made in the next 100 years will echo through eternity, determining whether Earth becomes another dead rock orbiting a dying star, or the birthplace of gods. Think about that weight for a moment. Your generation, your lifetime, your daily choices are participating in the most consequential period in the 4-5 billion year history of our planet. The pressure should be crushing, but instead, it should be liberating, because it means that everything you do matters on a cosmic scale. But here's where it gets really interesting and really terrifying. The transition from Type 0 to Type 1 isn't just about technology or energy or global cooperation. It's about consciousness itself. It's about humanity learning to think as a single, unified intelligence rather than billions of competing individuals. And that transformation has already begun, whether we realize it or not. The internet isn't just a communication network. It's the beginning of a planetary nervous system. Social media isn't just entertainment. It's humanity's first crude attempt at collective consciousness. Artificial intelligence isn't just a tool. It's the prototype for the kind of distributed thinking that Type 1 civilizations require. But like any evolutionary transition, It's messy, chaotic, and dangerous. We're experiencing the growing pains of a species trying to become something it's never been before. The polarization, the information wars, the breakdown of shared reality, these aren't signs that we're failing. They're symptoms of a transformation so profound that it's tearing apart our old ways of thinking and forcing us to evolve new ones. The question is whether we'll successfully navigate this transition or whether we'll tear ourselves apart in the process. And that's where the cosmic perspective becomes crucial. Because when you understand what we're potentially becoming, when you see the full scope of the ladder we're trying to climb, it becomes impossible to get caught up in the petty conflicts and narrow thinking that characterize our current moment. Border disputes become irrelevant when you realize we're all passengers on the same spaceship. Economic systems become temporary experiments when you understand we're heading toward post-scarcity abundance. Cultural conflicts become growing pains when you see them as part of humanity's awkward adolescence before we mature into a Type 1 civilization. But here's the part that keeps me awake at night, staring at the ceiling and trying to wrap my mind around the implications. What if we're not the first attempt at consciousness on Earth? What if previous iterations of intelligence have already climbed this ladder, transcended physical reality, and moved on to higher dimensions? Think about it. Earth is 4.5 billion years old. Complex life has existed for over 500 million years. Human civilization is maybe 10,000 years old. That's a rounding error in geological time. What if, buried beneath millions of years of sediment and tectonic activity, there are traces of previous civilizations that made it all the way to Type 2 or Type 3 before transcending physical existence entirely? What if the reason we haven't found obvious signs of alien civilizations isn't because they don't exist, but because they've all graduated beyond the need for physical matter and energy? What if the universe is teeming with Type 5, Type 6, and Type 7 consciousnesses that exist in dimensions we can't perceive, watching our clumsy attempts to reach Type 1 the way we might watch children learning to walk? This possibility adds a whole new layer to the cosmic hierarchy. It suggests that consciousness isn't just evolving upward through the Kardashev scale, it's evolving outward, beyond the physical universe entirely. The highest levels aren't just about controlling more energy or matter, they're about transcending the need for energy and matter altogether. And if that's true, then every civilization that successfully navigates the transition from Type 0 to Type 1 isn't just saving itself. It's joining a cosmic community of transcended consciousnesses that exist beyond our current ability to detect or comprehend. But here's what gives this cosmic perspective its real power. It doesn't diminish the importance of our current struggles, it amplifies them. Every challenge we face, from climate change to nuclear proliferation to artificial intelligence alignment, isn't just a human problem. It's a test that every aspiring Type 1 civilization must pass. The solutions we develop, the wisdom we gain, the consciousness we evolve in response to these challenges becomes part of the cosmic database of knowledge that transcended civilizations have compiled over billions of years. Our struggles aren't meaningless. They're contributions to the universe's growing understanding of how consciousness can successfully navigate the transition from primitive to transcendent. And that means that even if we fail, even if humanity destroys itself before reaching Type 1, our attempt won't be wasted. The lessons learned from our failure will help guide future attempts at consciousness, whether they arise on Earth again or on distant worlds where other species are facing their own Type 0 to Type 1 transition. But let's not plan on failure. Let's plan on success. Let's envision a future where humanity not only survives its current challenges but thrives, evolves, and begins the long journey up the cosmic ladder toward ultimate transcendence. What would that journey look like from the inside? What would it feel like to be part of a species that's actively evolving toward godhood? The first thing you'd notice is the gradual dissolution of the barriers that currently separate us. not through force or coercion, but through the natural evolution of consciousness itself. As we develop more sophisticated communication technologies, as we create more immersive virtual realities, as we enhance our cognitive capabilities through biotechnology and artificial intelligence, the boundaries between individual minds would start to blur. You might begin to experience moments where you're not sure if a particular thought or emotion originated in your own consciousness or emerged from the collective intelligence you're connected to. Dreams might become shared experiences. Creativity might become collaborative at a level we can't currently imagine. Problem solving might involve tapping into a vast network of intelligences working together in ways that transcend individual capability. But this wouldn't be a loss of individuality. It would be an expansion of what individuality can mean. You'd still be you, but you'd also be part of something larger. Your unique perspective would remain valuable precisely because it adds something irreplaceable to the collective consciousness. As this process continues and humanity transitions into a true Type 1 civilization, you'd witness the planet itself becoming more responsive to collective human will. Weather systems might be guided by the combined intentions of billions of minds working in harmony. Ecosystems might be maintained through a kind of telepathic connection between human consciousness and the natural world. The distinction between technology and biology would disappear entirely. Your body might be enhanced with systems that connect directly to the planetary energy grid. Your mind might be augmented with capabilities that allow you to perceive and interact with reality in ways that are currently impossible. So there you have it. 7 levels of cosmic evolution that stretch from our current fumbling attempts at planetary energy management all the way up to consciousness that transcends the very concept of existence itself. 7 rungs on an infinite ladder that every spark of intelligence in the universe is climbing, whether they know it or not. The next time you're stuck in traffic, arguing about politics, or worrying about your mortgage, remember this: you're not just living your life. You're participating in the universe's grandest experiment. Your consciousness learning to know itself. You're a crucial note in a symphony that spans from the humblest biological awareness to reality transcending godhood. The question isn't whether humanity will eventually join the ranks of Type 7 civilizations. The question is whether we'll survive long enough to begin that journey. And that answer lies not in some distant future, but in the choices we make right now, today, in this very moment. The ladder is infinite, the climb is eternal, and it starts with a single step.